Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
White Plains Police. We're here for a welfare check.
Open this door! What you think? You're not coming into my home. Help me! Help me! I need help!
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 387. Releasing November 19 on HBO Max is The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, a film that depicts the true life events that led to the death of elderly African-American veteran Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. at the hands of police officers. An intense and harrowing experience that features an excellent lead performance by Frankie Faizon. The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain is also an incredibly relevant film that again brings to light the issue of policing in urban areas and towards those with mental illness. And I'm happy to say joining me now on the podcast is the writer and director of The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, Mr. David Midell. David, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, David, what I love about movies and watching movies is often you might come across stories that you never heard of before, or people in history you never heard of before as well. And it can be a really illuminating experience oftentimes. In your movie, The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain is one of those experiences that I had. Of course, myself being in Australia and also the fact that this case was back in 2011, I believe. I think, so much has happened since then. Maybe the story has gone by the wayside before this movie came out. I think it's really great that I can watch this film and learn about Kenneth and learn about what happened to him on that night in November in 2011. What about yourself? When it came to learning about Kenneth's story, do you remember the first time you remembered hearing about it? Was it like in the news at the time, or was this something that you kind of caught up on afterwards?
Yeah, it was something that I caught up on afterwards. This is, like you mentioned, this was back in 2011. And I think it was, at some point in 2014, 2015, I can't remember exactly when it was, but somewhere around then, I was just doing some research online about, the criminal justice system and policing and those kinds of things. And I came across Kenneth Chamberlain Sr.'s name. And there were a number of things that really jumped out to me initially about his story because of some, personal things about myself, personal experiences that I've had. I was a special education teacher for many years. I worked with students with developmental disabilities and emotional and behavioral disorders. And I actually am myself on the autism spectrum. Given my background, this story really resonated with me because one of the things that jumped out to me about it was how ill-prepared and tragically misguided these police officers were when it came to communicating with somebody who was in the midst of a mental health crisis that they actually had caused. They had caused the situation to escalate in the first place, and they were just so woefully, tragically ill-prepared and misguided when it came to de-escalating the situation rather than escalating it even further. So it really resonated with me for those reasons. And I decided to reach out to the Chamberlain family. And I started a conversation with Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., And the script and the story of the film ended up kind of being derived from those conversations that I had with Kenneth Chamberlain Jr.
Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. has been, there every step of the way in getting justice for his father. He's been there with the appeals and the civil suits, etc. I'd imagine reaching out to him, I'm not sure, but I'd imagine a lot of people might have already reached out to him in regards to, making a film or a documentary or series, etc., considering how much of a hotbed issue that this case is. What was it about what you presented to him that really kind of made him say, yeah, I'm going to go with you, David? Was there something in a way, for example, is it that yourself coming from a background of having autism and coming from that angle, does that help in the way that you kind of wanted to present Kenneth's story? Did that kind of help Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. and say yes to you in regards to putting this film on screen?
Yeah, I think that may have been part of it. What Kenneth reports is that, that was, sort of a factor in, I guess, making him feel like, just given my background, that I had a sense of some of the things that were very, very complex about this story, and some of the things that could be misconstrued or could be portrayed as, cliched or stereotypical, those kinds of things.
Yes.
But I think it was really, Kenneth has been fighting, as you mentioned, for accountability for nearly a decade now. In fact, the film's premiere on HBO next week is officially on the exact 10-year anniversary of the events that are portrayed in the film. So he's been, he has been pursuing this the entire time. And yeah, he's had people approach about, various projects and those kinds of things. But I think for various reasons, none of them ever came to fruition. They got stalled, those kinds of things. So I think he sensed the fact that we were very serious about this, that we were going to treat the subject matter and his father's story with the respect that it deserved. And, we made the decision very early on. And when I say we, I mean myself and then my producing partner, Enrico Natale. We made the decision very early on that we were going to make Kenneth Chamberlain Jr.'s voice the primary voice behind the film, which is why I say that, the script and the story were derived from the conversations that we had initially. And I think that, because of the enormous respect that we have for Kenneth and the work that he's done over the past 10 years, pursuing justice not only for his father, but for other people who've been other people in families who've been victims of police violence, that he understood that his voice was really going to be the primary voice that we were listening to, and that we were going to treat his father's story with the respect it deserved.
There's complexities to this case, because I remember reading somewhere that this is kind of like a case where there's like three sides to the story. You have the police, what they say, you have the forensics, the facts that are laid out, and then you also have the residents who are witnesses to what happened to Kenneth that night, which is depicted in your film. When you piece together the screenplay, is it just a case of just grabbing all of these different kind of sides and kind of like merging together and then creating the best movie that you can from it? Because, of course, at the end of the day, you are making a movie. It's not a documentary. It's not a surveillance from the night. You are putting together art. Is it just a case of trying to grab all of these kind of aspects and pulling them together and piecing together the best screenplay you can to represent what happened that night?
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the biggest challenges that we faced, I think, because yes, it is a film. It's a narrative film, so it has that. It feels strange to use the word entertainment, but there is that aspect to it. But at the same time, we took this story obviously very, very seriously, and we knew that we had a responsibility to portray it in as honest and accurate a way as we possibly could, and that goes, that speaks to not wanting to demonize any of the characters in particular, wanting to make sure that everybody is portrayed as a human being with flaws, that nobody showed up on that morning assuming that that somebody was going to end up dead.
Right.
So it was challenging, though, kind of figuring out, like you said, there's really no single concrete set of facts in this case. There is the story that the police put out. There's the story that the residents tell, and there's the story that the forensic evidence tells. And there are certain places where all three of those stories match, and certain places where all three of the stories diverge. And, unfortunately, the primary person who can really tell us what happened is unable to, because he's deceased, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. So, yeah, we had to be very careful and deliberate about, taking very educated guesses where we needed to, operating from a set of facts that we knew were concrete. But then obviously we had to use our imagination in certain sections to fill in some of the gaps, some of the discrepancies between these stories and those kinds of things. So that was really a challenge, making sure that we were being as responsible as we possibly could in, taking these educated guesses about which direction to go with certain things where there isn't one definitive set of facts.
With the goal being Kenneth Chamberlain Sr.'s voice, his presence is central to the story. Crucial is the casting of who will play him. And Frankie Faizon delivers just a tremendous performance in this movie. And he's an actor that, I'm 40 now, so I've grown up watching him in movies and shows. I remember the first time I saw him was in Coming to America, and then, of course, all the Hannibal Lecter series as well. I think he's the only one who played like the same role in all four movies, actually.
I think he has that record of being the only one who's appeared in all four.
That's correct. I think so. And The Wire later on, etc. He's an accomplished, terrific actor, and he gives, which is remarkable to me. I think he's like almost late 60s, early 70s. The performance of his career right now in your movie. Yeah. What was it like casting him? Was he someone that you had on the radar straight away in regards to playing Kenneth?
He was one of them. He was one of the people that we had in mind. Yeah, when you look at the industry, there aren't a lot of really three-dimensional, fully developed lead protagonist roles for actors beyond maybe the age of 50. So the list of actors that we could kind of pull from was not a huge list, and he was always near the top of that list. And we knew, based on what we had seen, the types of characters that we had seen him play before, that obviously he played a huge variety of types of characters. He'd been in a huge variety of genres. He had been in comedies, dramas, action, thrillers, all those kinds of things. So his career was very, very eclectic. And it was really an incredible experience watching him play this role. He really set the tone for everyone on set in terms of how not only the quality of his performance and the level of commitment that he was demonstrating, but just in terms of how he treated everybody on set. He was the most professional actor I've ever worked with in my career. He was nothing but respectful and gracious of everyone on set, despite the fact that he was going so deep into this character that, there were times between takes when he would just kind of sit alone, be on his own. We always like to say that we didn't really meet the real Frankie, who is actually, Frankie is actually, a kind of a light, jovial guy who's, has a great sense of humor, and there's a lightness about him. But we didn't see much of that on set because he was so deep in this character that we in some ways feel like we didn't really meet Frankie until he was finally finished playing the character.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by 80s Tees. 80s Tees is an online retailer of licensed t-shirts and pop culture gear from your favorite movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, comic books, and musicians. Celebrate your inner 80s nerd and click on the link in the show notes below to get the raddest retro t-shirts delivered to your door. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Loot Crate. Founded in 2012, Loot Crate is the worldwide leader in fan subscription boxes. Loot Crate partners with industry leaders in entertainment, gaming, sports, and pop culture to deliver monthly themed crates, produce interactive experiences in digital content, and film original video productions. No matter what you geek out about, Loot Crate has a subscription box for you. To get your very own exclusive collectibles, apparel, and gear delivered to your door, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is also brought to you by Vudu. Watch the latest movies and TV shows anytime, anywhere. No subscriptions, no contract. Enjoy stunning quality in up to 4K ultra high definition at home and download and watch on your mobile device as well. To rent and buy from over 100,000 titles or watch thousands of movies free with Vudu Movies on us, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the show. I think what's really important about his performance and your movie as well is that, the conversation regarding policing towards people of color has been, pretty dominant over the last couple of years, but a conversation that hasn't been spoken about enough is policing of people with mental illnesses. You mentioned before that you are on the autism spectrum. My son is also on the autism spectrum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And one of the biggest fears that I have is that when he gets older, if his behavioral issues that he has now doesn't, improve in the ways that we hope, and that he still, has his temper tantrums and such, how will people respond to that? When he does it at home, me as his mum and dad, we can understand who he is and where he's coming from. But a stranger, especially a person, a policeman whose training is to diffuse the situation, no matter what it is, might take it another way, and that can go all sorts of directions, as evident in what happened with Kenneth Chamberlain.
Right.
Is the hope that this movie, on top of the conversation of policing of people of color, especially in urban areas, is also the hope that the conversation will be dominated by how people will approach people with mental illness, especially how police will approach people with mental illnesses, because there is moments in the film where there are some police officers who want to take a different approach towards, resolution, a different type of, towards a peaceful resolution, but they're looked at as lesser than. And then, at the end of the day, what happens. Is it a hope that hopefully there will be changes in regards to how we approach people with mental illnesses in society, especially when it comes to the issue of crime or criminals, or even what happened with emergency situations like in this movie?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge piece that I hope the film, that I hope the film generates discussions and conversations about, because, we know that, in America, and I'm not quite sure how the dynamics in Australia, but I know, obviously in America, people of color, particularly Black and brown people, are disproportionately likely to be injured or killed by police. And the same goes for people with mental health challenges or developmental challenges like autism, like other developmental disabilities, emotional and behavioral issues. So it's absolutely, that's a huge part of it. And my hope is that, the film can generate discussions about what types of training are police officers really receiving. I know that there are some departments who have implemented de-escalation training or nonviolent crisis intervention training on how to respond to individuals with mental health challenges, but it's not nearly enough. When you look at the discrepancy between the number of hours in police academies that officers receive mental health training compared to the number of hours that they receive weapons training, it's like 40 to 1 or 60 to 1, something like that. So I think that, that's a huge piece of it. And, being on the autism spectrum myself, obviously it's personal for me, and having worked in special education for so many years, I've been involved in crisis situations, that have been resolved smoothly and safely. And I've been involved in crisis situations that have spiraled completely out of control, where people get injured. And there's, serious damage done sometimes. So it's very personal for me for those reasons. And that is a huge piece that I hope the film addresses in some way or generates conversation about, because like you said, in relation to your son, I'm sure that a lot of parents can relate to that, especially parents of children with special needs that, obviously he's going to be safe if he's having a behavior at home. But you never know how people in the community might react. You never know if there's an encounter with a police officer, is that police officer going to have the adequate training or the right mindset or the right, approach to de-escalate the situation and to exercise empathy and compassion, or might there be some different outcome? So that's a huge piece that I really hope the film addresses and generates conversation about.
The key word that you just mentioned there, I actually had in my notes for this movie was escalate. It just seems like this situation just grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
What is key to that feeling within me when I watch this film, the intensity of it, is that it's such a visceral experience. The editing, the angles that you made your shots with, the performances, of course. It's interesting that I read that you were very insistent towards both your cinematographer and editor that you were going to do this handheld. There wasn't going to be anything else but handheld. What was it? Was the decision behind that just to make sure you can catch that really visceral feeling and get in there really close and intimate so that the audience can feel exactly what's happening?
Yeah, it was funny, actually, because, I right from the very beginning, I had always envisioned the film being shot with that, with that kind of docudrama style, because the whole film takes place in real time. And the goal was really to put the audience in the middle of the action in that hallway and in that apartment. So it always made sense to me to do it that way. And I remember one of the first conversations that I had with the cinematographer, Cameron Petramali, who had never shot a film like this before with this style. We actually sat together and we watched a number of Paul Greengrass films and Catherine Bigelow films that have employed that style really, really effectively. And he asked me, we were talking about the equipment that we would need. And he said, he said something like, are you, you're not going to want, no dolly shots, no tripods, nothing like that. And I said, Nope, nothing like that. And he's like, you're sure? It was almost, it was a funny conversation because he had never shot a film like this. And, he just wanted to make sure that he was going to be bringing the equipment that we would need. But yeah, it always just made sense to me to shoot it with that style because we wanted that, like you said, that visceral sense of immediacy with this escalation. We wanted to put the audience in the shoes of the people who were involved in it, in a way that it would have a visceral impact that we, because there, for example, with Frankie's character, with Kenneth, there's so much going on, from the yelling going on outside, the pounding on the door, his hearing aids, the psychological issues that he's experiencing. Yeah. There's so much going on. We wanted to try to approximate with, the camera work as well as the sound design and the sound mixing. And we were very, very lucky. We had an incredible sound designer and sound mixer, Scott Jennings, and many other people on the sound team as well, not just Scott, but he was kind of the overarching figure that put it all together. And, from the camera work to the sound design and the sound mixing, we really wanted to get the audience inside Kenneth's mind, to, sort of approximate what it might be like for somebody in this situation. How frightening this must have been, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I am typically not a big fan of kind of like what I call a shaky cam style of filmmaking, because only a few people can really do it well. I mean, you mentioned a couple of names there, Paul Greengrass and Catherine Bigelow. What I think how you utilized it in your film was just really effective and masterful. And I think it really does really put you in the room amidst the chaos. And I think that's what's important to understand about the story, is that the chaos in that movie, just kind of escalates to like a boiling point. And then for the movie at the end to end the way it does, with real life audio, real life, there wasn't body cams then from what I understand. And also the technology with phones and such, we weren't there yet with a camera on every phone. So what we're listening to there, is that kind of like the recording from that life, what was that company called? Was it Life Save box? Was that pretty much what we listened to at the end of the film?
It was Life. Yeah, it's a medical alert company essentially. Had Kenneth had a call box, and he could communicate with the monitoring station, with the woman who was at the monitoring station. He was communicating with her the entire time. So most of the audio that you're hearing in the actual recordings of the real incident, the audio is from that call box. The video, actually, you're right. They didn't have body cams at the time. The video that you see is actually from a camera mounted on the taser that they used. That was the only camera that actually recorded any of it. It's only a small section of it, and you can see it's a very grainy black and white video. It's not not high resolution or anything like that. But so that's where the camera footage was from, and then the audio was from that call box. With Kenneth was communicating with her throughout the entire incident, and we were very lucky. We had a phenomenal actress, Anika Noni Rose, play that medical attendant for the film, and she she is really one of his strongest allies. Throughout this entire incident, as she was in real life as well.
It's just really effective, amazing stuff, and just terrific how you and your crew really pulled all that together.
Thank you.
How did Morgan Freeman become involved with this? He's an executive producer. How did he kind of get involved with the whole process of it? And he's out there talking about the film now, which is terrific as well, because it's great to have someone of his credibility and star power just talking about how great your movie is.
Absolutely. Morgan and his whole team have really, really been incredible to work with. They kind of came on board after we had finished the film. One of our executive producers was a colleague of somebody who used to work at Morgan's company, Revelations. That he used to work there, and he had sent him the film. And I think his colleague asked, "Hey, do you want me to forward this over to Revelations?" And he did. And they watched it and it really, really resonated strongly with them. So, working with his team, primarily Laurie McCreary and Gary Lucchese, it's really been an incredible experience for us. The way that, we've been lucky to have Morgan and Frankie Faizon, the lead actor, and then Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. out in the media speaking about the film, and we kind of call them the dream team, because they all come to the story from a different, unique perspective. They all have different valuable points that they make in these discussions, and they're all Morgan and Frankie are really able to support Kenneth's voice in an incredible way, and just watching the message of the film get amplified through Morgan and his team has really been it's really been incredible. And Morgan has really, he's done a tremendous amount recently. He donated to Ole Miss, which is a university in Mississippi. He donated, I'm not sure what the actual amount was, but he donated enough. I believe, I could be wrong about the specifics, but it's either a department at Ole Miss, or he funded a study at Ole Miss that's actually going to be studying policing, the subject of policing, to try to come up with or just generate discussion about ways in which the policing field can improve, whether it's a community policing model or different types of training, different types of recruiting practices, those kinds of things. So Morgan's really made this a priority, both in his own community and nationwide.
Well, as the Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain really attests to, it's something that really needs to be looked at, because while everyone wants to support the police, we want to make sure that the police are equipped with the right training and the right attitudes when it comes to situations like this, so history doesn't repeat itself. I think that's what everyone really wants, and I really do hope that when this releases HBO Max November 19, that everyone watches it and takes to heart this man's story. He was a veteran, he was a good man, a father, a Christian, and the way that he was just killed in the way that he was not deserving of him or any other man, to be frank. So it's really an important movie that you made, David, and you've received a whole bunch of nominations from different awards bodies, including yourself from the Independent Spirit Awards. Frankie Faizon's got a lead performance nomination from the Gotham Awards, and I think it really deserved it, and I hope to see much more as the award season goes on, because it's a deserving film, and I hope everyone gets to watch it. And David Midell, I thank you so very much for your time today, and thank you for making this film. I think it's really important that Kenneth's story is being seen by everyone, and that his story be heard.
Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.